Hello, and welcome to our demonstration of Deltek Vision Resource Planning. My name is Brad Carmina, and I'll be taking you through the module today. On this first slide, we can see a few questions that many businesses may be asking themselves. And what we really want to focus on right now is the bottom left-hand corner where it's asking, are our resources effectively utilized? But not only that, are we properly planning and executing our projects as well? So why choose Deltek? We are a financially sound, recognized leader for project-based firms such as yourselves with over 16,000 clients worldwide. Today we'll be discussing our resource planning module for Deltek Vision. But just to give a little background on the solution as a whole, it's based on modern technology, which means it's web-enabled and users can access the program through a web page. We're project-focused, and really the project theme runs throughout the entire program. And really we've designed Vision to be a user-friendly solution. So it's fairly common in today's business practices to have grown into several different systems that are doing different things for the organization. So we'll have CRM in one system and proposals in another, and then maybe we're doing our resource management in something like Microsoft Project or Microsoft Excel, project management somewhere else. So really the goal with Vision is to take all of these disconnected systems and move them all into a single solution, a single ERP system, which is Deltek Vision. With Deltek Vision, we take all of these different components, including resource management and project management, move it all into a single cohesive program. Now what this does is it allows us to see not only on the resource management side and utilization within the same system that we go in to view our financials or do our timesheets, but it allows us to see what we've planned out on the project, but then also track accurately the actuals that we've spent against them. All right, let's have a look at the solution. Let's get back to our original question of, are my resources effectively utilized? What we can see on this screen here is a heat map showing us our utilization by employee for the next 2 months based on what they've been planned or the work that they've been planned to do on particular projects. Now let's take a look at the legend on the left-hand side here. And what we can see by looking at the legend is those who are blue on my screen are underscheduled, those who are red are overscheduled, and those who are green are properly scheduled. So looking across the time frame here, we can see that Craig and Stacy and Steve are top 3 people. They have a really heavy workload throughout this calendar view, but then folks like Dennis and Brenda are a little bit lighter. So this view allows us to easily see who's overworked, who's on the bench, where we may have holes in our calendars in the future, but then it'll also allow us to start taking some action. Now maybe as part of my role, I'm the supervisor of our civil engineering department within my company. So what I can really do over here is go over to my search, and then just using this labor category search, say, hey, give me all of the civil engineers within my firm. And when I go ahead and apply that filter, now the listing of employees that I can see is limited down to only the civil engineers within my firm. Now one idea I want to point out here is the idea of a generic resource. And a generic resource is exactly what it sounds like. I didn't know the name of the person or the employee that I was going to use to fill this work when I initially set up my plan, but I knew I needed a civil engineer, so I added just a civil engineer generic resource to my plan, and at some point later on in the future, I can go ahead and switch that over to a regular billable employee. Now one thing I want to focus on here is Kyle Holland. And Kyle Holland, he's pretty good for the first week, but then he's got about 125% utilization for the second week here, and maybe what I want to do is find another employee who has a little bit of wiggle room in their calendar to take some of this work from Kyle. So what I can do is go ahead and expand next to Kyle's name, and then here are the plans that Kyle is supposed to be working on for the next 3 weeks or 2 months or whatever my time scale is across here. So what I can do is just go ahead and look at these 14 hours that he has, do an employee search, and really what I want to do is find someone who has maybe not all 14, but at least 8 hours that are available who belong in the same organization as Kyle, who have the same skills and the same title. Okay, so this is really allowing me to narrow down the search of the employee to someone who really fits the skills of the person that I'm replacing. I go ahead and hit search. Now I can see I get a hit here, Peter O'Leary. Peter O'Leary has all of these same skills, and he actually has the time available in the time frame to lighten Kyle's load a little bit. So what I can do is just go ahead and click on Peter's name, click reassign, and it automatically moves those 14 hours from Kyle Holland over to Peter O'Leary. Then I can go ahead and save that change, and what that'll do is go ahead and update the actual project plan that I had out there. Now, one thing to point out is Peter O'Leary already had some time. He had an hour on that particular Wynn Casino project, so it's just added the 14 in for that week for Peter O'Leary. Now, I mentioned before the idea of generic resources, and maybe one of the things you do as a firm is have a weekly or bi-weekly staffing meeting where your project managers, whoever's in charge of really budgeting your people, gets together and kind of wheels and deals and trades employees or whatever may need to happen. This particular view right here, generic resource assignments, shows me all of the projects that are out there that has those generic resources associated with them. So Four Seasons Creative Learning Center, I can see that I have 3 generic resources out there. At some point in time, I really need to find a real billable employee to take that work. So just like on the resource utilization view, in the generic view, we can go ahead and do that employee search, again, do the skill search, and get the correct person to take that work. Now, if I were to go ahead and do a search here, I can take Royce Johnson here, click reassign. Now you can see that's reassigned to Royce Johnson. I save this, and again, that's going to go back and update that resource plan for me. So you may be saying, hey, this is all great, but how do we actually get all of that information into the system? We've moved on to our project plan, and this is the project plan for our Benson Research Lab. What I'd like to show you is a few different ways of how we can actually get this information into a plan, make it easier to plan our projects. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and navigate up to new here, and new will show me the different options that I have to actually initiate plans within the system. Now the first option here, new plan, would just open up a blank new plan and I can start entering everything from scratch. But the next option, new plan from existing project, allows me to use my existing project list that I have out there already and really look up a project and choose that project and then start mapping in some of the options or the data that we have for that project already out there into my plan. So use some of the data that I already have existing in the system to make it easier to create a new project plan within Vision. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and map our project number into the structure of the plan, but then what I can also do is copy the employees into the plan, and that takes the employee team from the project record itself, and it'll map those employees into my plan. Now if the plan or the project has been going on for quite a while, I can also choose to copy the actual hours into the plan, and that's going to set up each person's start date as well as an end date, and then populate the actual hours that they've spent as budget on the plan. You can then go in and edit the plan values and really get it down to where it should have been, but this helps you really start to manage that time frame for a project that already exists. Now what if the project doesn't already exist, but you're a CRM user and you have an opportunity out there? We can go ahead and go to New and choose to create plan from an existing opportunity. So I can go ahead and grab any opportunity that's out there. And let me just grab the same one here. But then I can also choose a template plan. So we can have multiple templates out there and then just grab a template. And maybe that template has the work breakdown structure built into it already. Or for some particular projects you use the same staff or you use the same type of generic resources. We can use those templates to build out our labor and expense tabs, and we'll get to those in just a moment. The other thing that we can do here is choose to copy our service estimate into the plan. And the service estimate in the opportunity is where you can go in and start building out a little bit of the structure. How many hours do we need for each of the generic resources that we have and such. If you've already done that exercise in the opportunity, why do it over again within the plan? Let's copy that information in here and use it going forward. Okay. So just to step through a few items in the plan here, if we had created this from a project or an opportunity, most of the information that you see here would already be filled out. So we'd have our client already, our project manager, our supervisor, what organization it belongs to. The other thing that we can do here is show unposted labor right in our labor tab as actuals. So that the labor that's sitting out there on timesheets, we can choose to show that as actuals against budget on our labor tab. What I'm going to go ahead and do is move on to our rates tab and just talk about rates very quickly. And some of the power or the beauty in this module is that getting back to our slide before where all of our modules are in a single system, This allows us to use the same rate tables and rates and billable values for the employees that accounting uses to actually bill out our projects. So we're getting accurate rates when we're actually planning our projects out to get an accurate view of how that project may end up in the end as far as cost and billable values. Let's have a look at our labor tab. And our labor tab is really where we're going in to budget our resources, our labor resources, against our project or our plan. In this case, you can see that the Benson Research Lab pre-design phase code analysis tasks are already mapped into the structure of my plan, and then I could see my people beneath that. I'm mixed in with both named resources like Chris Jensen. I also have a civil engineer in there as well. So that's our example of a generic resource on a plan. Now, one thing to point out is that each resource has their own start and end date. And then in the right-hand grid, we can see there how they're budgeted or what their time is across the time frame. Now, a few things to point out. We have a baseline, which is how we felt the plan should go when we were first setting it up, when we were first doing that budgeting. Planned hours is really what the plan looks like today, including any changes that we've made so far. And the next section is actual hours. So here's another part where having the solution integrated with the same system where we're doing our timesheets and our accounting and billing, we're actually getting real information back into our plan. So not only can we budget our plan out, but we can also start doing a bit of analysis of that plan, how well we're tracking against our budget, just by looking at the screen here. So there's a few different things that we can do with this view, and one thing I'd like to do is just go ahead and go up to options up here and say configure planning grids. So at the moment you can see that I'm only showing hours, baseline, planned hours, and actual hours, but I could also show baseline cost, planned cost, actual cost, or billable values as well. Also have the option to include a Gantt chart or my budgeted revenue from time frame to time frame, as well as an earned value percentage. Now maybe what I'd want to do here in this case is see a Gantt chart, and if I go ahead and click OK, now I can get that Gantt chart view built into my grid as well. Then jump back over to my configure planning grids and choose to disable the Gantt chart, but what I also want to have a look at is on the left hand side, this determines which columns I can see in my left hand grid. So in this case I'm seeing my start and finish date, planned hours, and a few other items, but maybe I also want to see what my estimate to complete billable value is for my job, and I go ahead and click OK, and that'll include that column in this summary grid on the left hand side. So just to step through the summary grid a little bit, I have some more information that's hidden here. I can go ahead and move this grid over so I can get a bigger picture view of the project. So this is summary information, not period by period, but what's happened job to date. So I had 13,000 hours planned to date. So far I've only used 4,900 of that. But then you can also see it at a resource by resource level as well. Chris Jensen had 181 hours and he spent 207. So he is over budget. We can go ahead and start scrolling through the different columns that we have available here, and as we scroll through them, we're really seeing some relevant information about the project. Now, a couple of things to point out. When we see anything that says EAC, that just means estimate at completion. That's taking what we've spent so far, our actuals to date, and then what we have left planned on the job, adding those two together, and that would be my estimate at completion. It's a really valuable number in that I can reference my estimate at completion to my planned value and see how I'm doing against my budget. It truly is a measure of whether I'm over or under my budget to date. Estimate to completion is just taking today's date or whatever date I use for the estimate to complete date and saying this is what I have budgeted left to finish the job. So what we're actually seeing when we see EAC is job to date spent plus ETC. Now there's an indicator on the screen that something's happening that shouldn't have, and it's the label of code analysis over here. You can notice that for this particular task, the label is red. And what that means is that someone has charged time to the project that wasn't planned for it. So what I can do is go ahead and come over here to the left-hand column, go ahead and right-click and choose Job to Date Charging. This Job to Date Charging pop-up is going to show me everyone who spent time on my project, how much they've spent. Next we can take a look at budgeting expense. And in this tab we're really budgeting our in-house expenses and items that may come through AP vouchering, but not really any consultant expenses at this point. So you can see your different general ledger categories down here. We have a start and end date for each one of those, and a planned cost, a planned billable value, and we can schedule those out across the time frame. Now, just like we can schedule labor and expense, we can also schedule our consultants. And the difference between the consultants and the expense is that we can actually name our vendors here within consultant planning. So each consultant could have their own budget, and you could put in, what the quarter or month or whatever we're expecting that expense to come in. The next tab in planning is our analysis tab. And our analysis tab is taking everything that we've planned so far, from our own labor costs to our direct consultants and our other expenses. You can see those here in the gray items. But then it's also allowing us to see what the total compensation is for the project, the consultant fee, etc. I can also put in an overhead multiplier as well as a contingency fee. But it's allowing me to see, based on all of this information, what my profit percentage may be. But what if I wanted a 35% profit on this particular project? I can go ahead and type 35 in here, and it's going to update the rest of these fields and show me, well, for 35% profit, what I really need to be asking for as far as compensation goes is $1.536 million. Now, if I know that I can only get $1.4 million in fee for this particular plan or project, I can go ahead and update that, and then I could look at 28.88% in profit. So it's really just a quick tool to see how changes within our plan or our profit or our compensation may affect each other. And next is our summary tab, and summary is giving us some real valid or valuable information about our particular project. But what I want to focus on right now for today is the billing summary down below. Now we could have a cost summary here as well if you choose to look at your information on a cost basis instead of being based on billings. So let's just step through a few of the rows and columns that we have here: labor, expenses, consultants, and then total amounts. Stepping through the total amounts, I have the baseline, which is how I felt the project was going to run from the beginning, and my planned value, which planned is how I expect it to be throughout the end of the project today. Now, job to date is what we've charged based on timesheets and AP vouchers and consultant vouchers as well. Estimate to completion is really what we have budgeted left to finish the project. Estimate at completion is taking that job to date value plus our estimate to completion and giving us this estimate at completion. And then plan minus EAC is simply how over or under budget we are for this particular plan. Now, I'd like to wrap up on the plan back on my labor tab. And what I'd like to show here is back up in my options, my Accordion Calendar format. And this really drives what we're seeing here over on the right-hand grid as far as the time frame. So in this case, if we look across the top, I have a quarter, and then I have within each quarter, I have the month within each quarter. But then I could really define the time frames that I want to see that information. So in this case, I have two time frames. And the first one I'm seeing year by year, and then the second one I'm seeing month and quarter. I can get down to even a daily view if I needed to. So most commonly we may see a week view and then a month view on top of that. But you can really determine how you want to see these dates represented on your detailed tabs. The last thing I want to point out is up in my actions, I could choose to import a plan from Microsoft Project. So if your people are used to using Microsoft Project, they can continue to do the work in Project and then import those plans into Vision. But then maybe you also have a client requirement to provide Microsoft Project plans to clients. We can also choose to export the plan out of Vision into a Microsoft Project format, so then you can send that Gantt chart or Gantt view out to your client. So let's talk about some of the reporting options we have with the Deltek Vision Project Planning module. Here we can see a labor plan chart. This is for a specific project plan, and this is allowing us to see actual versus baseline versus planned on a time frame in a graphical manner. The next report is resource utilization by organization. It allows us to see which organizations we have in the system, who the employees that work for them, what their total hours available are, and then again a bit of that heat map information that we saw before in the resource utilization screen. Next is a resource forecast across an 8-month projection. So here are the different people that we have within our organization or people who I'm responsible for, and these are how many hours that they have budgeted across the next 8 months. And last report is a view of my firm-wide utilization. So I'm looking at what my full-time employee need may be over the next 2 months on a 2-week by 2-week time frame. So in this case, the number that I'm seeing here on the bottom is the total number of employees that I may need or have on the bench based on the work that I have planned. So in this case, in the first week, I have 10.5 bodies on the bench based on what I have planned for the next 2 weeks. The 4 reporting examples you've just seen certainly aren't the extent of the reports that are available out of the reporting option for the resource planning module. There are several other reports, and based on how you either configure them or sort and group them or what selections you use, you can get different results based on the sample sets or whatever you're looking at from the system. Moving on to our timesheet, owning resource planning opens up a few options in the timesheet as well. So I can go ahead and go up to copy and then choose from planning, and that's going to automatically populate my timesheet with the projects that I'm supposed to be working on in this time frame. The next thing that I can do is go ahead and go up to show and say show planned hours, and that's going to show me my own personal budget for these 2 projects. So it's not only going to show me my start and end dates and things like that, but also the total planned hours that I have for the project, the job to date hours that I've spent, remaining hours, so my own budget remaining, but then also what are the hours or how many hours was I supposed to be working on these 2 projects for this particular time frame. It's adding a little bit of personal responsibility to the time that's being charged to the projects. And to wrap up, just to cover a few of the alerts that are available with the resource planning module. First is the baseline change. So if certain members of the organization need to be aware that a baseline has changed on a particular plan, you can have that alert fire off. Budget milestone. Once we reach a certain percentage of completion or a certain dollar value, alert someone. When a project is created from a plan, whether my estimate at completion has exceeded my baseline or not. And then a few others, but a couple of the important ones are maybe my resource assignment. So letting my people know when they've been assigned to work on a particular plan. If you'd like any more information on what you've seen today or to schedule a one-on-one demonstration, please contact Jeff Mulford at deltek.com. Number is 617-528-2703. And thank you for your time today.